Daniel with my father here, Jerry. Say hi, Dad.
Oh,
I think this is the first time we've seen like an Oscar movie on this show that wasn't decades old. Um, as well as the true story. Obviously, the trial of the Chicago Seven is real thing. You know way more about the trial than I did, as you said you wrote several papers on it.
I
And
wrote about Yippies, about Reuben and I wrote
Hoffman.
Hoffman, yeah,
Um,
and in fact, I wrote a major paper for law school on Reuben and Hoffman
hmm And I know
and
you. Oh yeah,
their
go
complaints
ahead.
as to the not their complaints to the legal system as a whole, and the and uh, both. Well, as I know, I'm not certain about the three main members I know are Reuben, Hoffman, and Hayden.
hmm
And both Hayden, all three of them wrote major books on after the trial.
hmm
And especially with Reuben and Hoffman, they complained about several things. Like one of the big complaints, and this was actually pointed out somewhat in the movie, was that the person who handles the defendants uh, also handles the jury. And in this case, he not only made statements to the jury that was improper, but he handled the defendants improperly. And in fact, one of the points in the movie, the judge states to the bailiff to take Bobby Seals out of there and deal with him appropriately in the back room,
hmm
which gives you all kinds of hints. But those were the Sorkin had actually taken the exact words of the judge and put that in there.
Yeah, and I know Aaron Sorkin isn't always known for his historic accuracy. Like, obviously, Social Network is rife with them and stuff. It's a great movie. It's one of my favorite movies of the last decade. I think it's one of yours too, actually.
Yeah,
Um, on it, but this one you said he stuck pretty close to it, from what you know and what you look. I know you looked it up some because you were interested.
yeah. In fact, several people who wrote, there's two of the newspaper writers who wrote a big book on the Chicago Seven about 5 years after the trial
hmm
and went into a lot of different things. Said that the biggest they said yes, the Sorgan is not always known, but he thought that Sorgan stuck a lot of things because he says what occurred was so outrageous.
hmm
He points out that one of the things that occur, of course, is Bobby Seals is bound and gagged and everything, and he says the actual trial in the movie it only goes on for a short time.
Yeah,
At the actual trial, it went on for about 5 days, and it was horrible. I mean,
yeah.
uh,
Bobby
that
Seals, of course, was the African American without representation at the trial.
right.
Um, yeah, I just was, uh,
One
but
of the, I mean, that was sort of, they said the biggest thing that he thought that Sorgan, although he says, I understand why Sorgan did it, was the interplay between uh, Hayden and Abby Hoffman. You know, Hayden sort of pictured, we sort of get a picture of Hayden as this intellectual more, and
hmm
Abby Hoffman as the sarcastic
hmm
screw up, or whatever you want to call him. Uh, and he says, actually, Hayden was just as big a revolutionary as Hoffman
hmm
in the thing. I think, oh, that my own opinion from reading them and seeing them, although I didn't see them in the trial,
hmm
uh, that they gave a pretty good idea of both uh, Redmond and Hoffman. Hoffman writes these. I mean, he wrote a book called Revolution for the Hell of
Yeah.
It, and of course he wrote Steal This Book,
Mhm.
which is a manual how to all kinds of things like making bombs, from making bombs to how to pull off theft.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's all written in a sarcastic way. Uh, Hayden's books were more straightforward, and Hayden made his arguments of why he thinks changes are made. Uh,
Mhm.
Hoffman went around it as a uh, more of a show,
Yeah.
and but there's no question in reading Hoffman you get a real high intellectual knowledge of basically you realize that there's a lot of sarcasm and it's brilliant uh, in his writings. The same thing is also true, although they pictured Jerry Rubin in
Mhm.
the story as not the Hoffman type,
Mhm.
but Rubin was a good writer too.
Mhm.
And Rubin was very similar to Hoffman, had a lot of humor put forth, but Rubin books were very good as to picturing it.
Mhm.
The but I mean, I thought the movie did an excellent job of telling about the times, what was going on, and what occurred in Chicago.
Mhm.
Uh, and you got to realize that what just occurred in Chicago wasn't LBJ who it actually hurt what occurred in Chicago.
Yeah.
It wasn't LBJ bringing the court case, it was Richard Nixon later bringing the court case.
Yeah. That was. I mean, that was one of the main things they made clear in the movie, especially with. They have Michael Keaton as the ex-attorney general who
Yeah,
actually testifies, and he talks about that. Which kind of brings me to another point in this movie is like they have a lot of obviously there's a lot of people in it. I mean, there's the seven that were on trial, their lawyers, the other team's lawyers, the judge, a lot of characters, and a lot of them, in all of them, do a great performance.
hmm
You have a lot of character actors in there, as well as like probably the lead. I mean, the closest to the lead is probably either Mark Rylance as the attorney or Sacha Baron Cohen as Abby Hoffman, who
yeah,
both of which do a fantastic job. Which is also kind of weird to say since we saw Sacha Baron Cohen as Borat
yeah,
like 2 days ago,
yeah.
and we'll talk about that one. But yeah, no, the acting in this movie I just found to be superb.
Yes, and Redmond did a great job.
Yeah, Eddie Redmayne.
And Eddie Redmond looked a lot like, I thought, looked tremendously like, well, uh, Cohen looked a lot like Hoffman, and Redmond looked a lot like Hayden.
Hmm.
Even, I mean, it was excellent makeup and everything.
Yeah.
And and I think that Sorkin did a great job of getting all the characters into it. And a lot of the things that occur in the movie that you think, Jesus, those things couldn't be true, they were true.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's the thing that gets you. There is an interesting thing. Jeremy Strong played Jerry Rubin.
Hmm.
They originally picked Seth Rogen for the part,
That's
but
interesting.
Rogen couldn't fulfill the part, so that due to other things, and so Jeremy Strong came in.
Hmm.
Uh, the I thought that Jeremy Strong did an excellent job
Hmm.
as him.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, no. All the people like I think they all like the movie's 2 hours and 10 minutes, so it's not a real long movie or anything. But I thought like with their given time, you got to know all the sorry, all the characters really in it well.
yeah,
Obviously, the two guys that were there that eventually that were found not guilty, you don't get much time with, but the movie even kind of explains why because they were there to give the jury kind of an out, and they
yeah.
weren't really big players.
It was at least from the idea of especially Hoffman and Kunstler and uh, Hayden, it was a purely political trial
Yeah.
and purely done for politics.
Hmm.
And so that was there. The one thing that they talk about is the questioning of, as to truthfulness, as to the questioning of Ramsey. Ramsey actually said all the things that he said in the trial. But Kunstler actually questioned him more about his role in shepherding the FBI. Actually, he didn't have the role, but when he did the investigation of all the FBI informants that were in the group. And Chris Kunstler was interested, of course, in getting his guys off, and as an attorney. Uh, and I don't know, I think what did they say? He was 28 times charged with contempt of court.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact, but he talked about how obviously,
Yeah,
like the attorney was done. They
yeah.
were all charged with the contempt of court repeatedly. Sometimes probably deserved.
Oh, well, a lot of times they were deserved. And a
Yeah.
lot of times at the end of the trial, I think the Kunstler, especially as the trial went on, when the judge made a ruling that was terrible, Kunstler objected even louder,
Yeah.
uh,
Hmm.
as you've seen.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so that was a thing that occurred in the trial. Uh, the one thing I think that a lot of people have pointed out how the trial is so relevant to today, but somewhat I think it isn't because
Hmm.
these were guys who were radicals as to on the outer edge
Hmm.
of things. And, you know, Donald Trump, when he talks about putting people in jail, he doesn't talk about the people on the outer edge. He
Yeah.
talks about regular politicians, you know,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
that. Mhm.
Well, I think there's also like that degree of it was a lot of thought crime that they were charging the people with.
Yeah,
A lot of you kind of had the clash between the farther left with like Abby Hoffman and his group, and then I'm blanking on his name again. With the guy who
Dellinger, I think.
Dallinger, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Eddie Redmayne plays, but yeah.
I
Dall-
mean, Redmond played Hayden.
Hayden, you have that clash kind of going on, but even though they're both kind of working towards the same thing, just not the exact way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought a lot of the stuff like it did seem like it was a lot of it wasn't was was pretty relevant.
Mhm.
You had obviously it's about a protest.
Yeah.
You have
And
how the the protests were agitated heavily by law enforcement and the guard and stuff. Uh,
well, the classic thing is that when it was saw on television,
mm,
the big news announcer, Walter Cronkite,
mm,
basically said, "This is wrong,"
yeah.
right on the air.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had a visceral reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And Walter Cronkite, if you know him, had, you know, he was flat faced for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the premier news amount things that showed no reaction
Mm-hmm.
to any side, and he had a reaction that night to what occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, like they
yeah,
pointed out in it, like a lot of their charges were, well, first off, they literally had the last people find that hey, they didn't start the protest, they didn't do it, it was started by another group,
yeah.
uh, and then they were charged with like conspiracy, which
Hmm.
has nothing to do with them even like uh, starting a riot or anything, uh, and it was a conspiracy to create essentially a protest.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's basically what they did. Uh, and as you said, one of the things in the movie I thought that wasn't put forward is Dellinger played a much bigger part back then. He was actually the guy who was the main leader of the anti-war protest.
Mhm.
Uh, Hayden was Students for There were three major groups that they pulled in. You have the Yippies, which is Hayden and Rudin,
Mhm.
which is these guys are more. They don't really have an organization.
Yeah.
There are guys, in '68 they led the march on the Pentagon, and I mean they surrounded the Pentagon and started chanting, trying to lift it off the ground.
Seems
Uh,
effective.
yeah. Uh, the uh, they were the Yippies. They were the performers in the thing. The two serious ones were Dellinger and, of course, the Students for uh, Democratic Society, which was Hayden and Rene Davis.
Mhm.
And of course, Rene Davis got beat up very badly,
Yeah, which they do show.
which they do show in at the time. And Students for Democratic Society uh, was uh, started well before that. It started on Berkeley's campus.
Mhm.
And the leader of the anti-war movement, or the big leader of the anti-war movement, of course, was David Dellinger,
Mhm.
uh, which was a more mainstream thing that was against the war.
Mhm.
Uh, the and But it was I thought the movie caught up the times very well
Mhm.
and what the things were about.
Yeah.
And I mean, even as I said, the Yippies did a lot of strange and unusual things, but they were the sarcastic group. They used a lot of dark humor.
Yeah. I mean, and it has a few scenes with that. Like,
Yeah,
I forget, like, with how the receptionist answers the phone and
yeah,
other things like that. I was gonna say, I mean, my only major complaint is I feel like they could have gotten a better director. Aaron Sorkin's not a bad director by any means, but like I know they had originally like Spielberg
yeah,
uh, on it. Obviously, like obviously he worked with David Fincher a lot and a few others.
yeah.
Uh, and I just think it might could use a bit more style. I don't know if you have any other real big complaints on it.
Well, I thought that he did one of the things I thought he did a really good job of was combining the footage from uh, the past
Yeah,
with
I agree.
with the footage of today, and I thought he did an excellent job of that. Uh, the I was thinking probably the best book I saw written on the actual demonstrations. This wasn't on trial. Was written by Norman Mailer called Miami and the Seas of Chicago. It showed basically the difference in the two uh, conventions, the one in Miami of the Republicans and the the Democratic one in Chicago. And uh,
Mhm.
and I think somewhat you got to realize that what happened in Chicago was two different Democratic parties fighting over everything. You
Yeah.
had the LBJ Democratic Party against the hardliners of the Chicago mayor. I forget what his name, Daley,
Mhm.
of Daley right now, who were fighting, and of course the difference between Ramsey Clark and of course the incoming. Uh, because Ramsey Clark blamed it directly on what the Chicago police did.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know,
Well.
but I thought it was an excellent movie,
Yeah.
uh, and as you said, I think it would probably get an Oscar nomination. I think that there's two or three people in the cast. Certainly, Sacha Baron Cohen has a good shot at getting an Oscar nomination. I think Redmond does too. I also like the performance of Kunstler,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. No. Yeah. All the acting in it was superb.
yeah,
I'd say it's probably the best movie we've seen so far this year. I realize that's not really a fair statement because of the year it's been in, but I thought it
mhm,
was a really, really good movie.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything left to say?
I don't think so. Yeah, no.
Okay, and with that, that's all we have. If you're watching this on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. Actually, same with Twitch. Thank you all, and have a nice night.